Welcome back, whiskey drinkers. This is another week of the Whiskey Gingers podcast. I'm Brandon. That's Chris, and I know we're coming to probably a little bit more fast and furious than we typically have with that bonus episode last week. But it didn't feel right not to do some kind of tribute to Toby Keith on the day of his passing. So shout out to Bob for coming on at the last second and doing a bonus set. But we're back with our regularly scheduled programming. We got Chris back with us. The only tricky thing is we couldn't be in person today. Probably people that live in the Northeast will understand why. We got kind of ambushed with a snowstorm out here, but we were going to find a way to get an ep off nonetheless. No fancy whiskeys this week, though.
Well, I appreciate, our fill-in for me, at least last week. That was definitely helpful to keep us on track. Definitely always fun to add a little new blood into the mix. And I think that you guys did a stellar job, and we got a lot of views. So, I mean, it was cool. Yeah, it was cool to have that opportunity. I mean, we obviously love seeing people get engaging, and we love having any back and forth that we can get. And from my understanding, there was like a fair amount of back and forth on that video as well, right, Brandon?
Yeah, it got to the point where I was talking to a guy essentially on YouTube where, I was doing it outside, and it's because I didn't have you doing it with me. I was kind of handling like all the production side of things. So I didn't really have anybody to go, hey, can you look this up? Or like, hey, what do you think about this? But there was a dude on YouTube where we'd be asking something. I'm like, anybody know when this happened? And by the next topic, maybe a minute later, I'd have a chat. Hey, looked it up. It's this. So that was actually pretty cool.
I mean, maybe we need that. Like a lot of the times we do have the backstage producers helping out with some of those things, but we need a dedicated like moderator for fact checking for us.
Yeah, it was pretty sick. I was definitely getting used to it. So I mentioned them a bunch during the last podcast. I do forget the name, but definitely appreciate all the help from last week.
That is awesome. Well, I guess we might as well tell people, even though we're not doing anything fancy, we should probably tell people what we're drinking because it is still a whiskey podcast, and I guess the people might be curious to know.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So yeah, you'll see why I'm going to leave this one off because Chris is going a little bit in a different direction than we usually do this evening. So I guess I'm the only one reviewing a new whiskey in a sense, although I'm not really excited about it. I was gifted a bottle of Kentucky Gentleman, and any gift is a great gift, and I'm appreciative whenever someone gives me whiskey because they clearly put some thought into it and realize it's something I enjoy. I'm going to have to hold a class for my friends to never, ever buy me plastic screw top whiskey. But the thought was there nonetheless. This is definitely one of your lower shelf options. I haven't even looked up a price for it yet. I'm kind of curious to see.
I was going to ask while you're looking it up. I mean, what do you consider to be like? I want to say this in a way that doesn't come off rude, but it's like if you're going to buy a whiskey for somebody, I feel like there is either a bare minimum price point that you want to go to or at least a quality standard. And I would hope that if you're buying whiskey for somebody, you at least kind of know their taste. So you know like what to get them in that sense. Because there are certain things where, like you said, you almost need a class to educate your friends on. Maybe I'm not a big fan of this one. Please don't buy it for me.
Yeah, and it's a little bit what to look for. So again, just for scope here, this gigantic, this size bottle ranges from $9.99 to $14.99.
Amazing.
So that's typically something to look out for when you go, wow, that's a lot of whiskey for not a lot of money. That's a great bargain. More often than not, it's just really horrible whiskey.
That's in pretty stark competition with that Canadian whiskey that we had that was like $11 or something.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah,
I don't remember which one it is. It's actually sitting in front of Windsor. Windsor was like $11.
Yeah, they're up there with the lowest of the low that we've had so far. Now, I haven't tasted it yet. It might surprise me, but I don't think it will.
To be fair, I didn't think that Windsor was that bad. It just wasn't. It didn't have enough flavor. It was kind of just tasting water with a little bit of whiskey flavor dashed in.
That's what this is going to be.
So
Yeah, so we'll see. Anyway, you're going with a little bit more of you're treating yourself a bit more in the flavor department.
treating myself with a whiskey ginger ale, make sure that it all works out. And I went with the Proper 12 whiskey just because we had it on hand from when we were making the whiskey sours from 2 episodes ago. And I figured, you know what? I like this whiskey. I'll give it a go with a little bit of ginger ale as well. So I just figured I'd make myself a little something as a taste treat. We don't often get to do something that we know we're definitely going to like every time. So it's kind of a nice thing to do every now and again.
That was smart, and we were kind of on the same page, because if I didn't have this Kentucky gentleman that I felt like I needed to do, because we have a duty to the listeners that if we have a whiskey that we haven't tried yet and you have the opportunity to review it, you kind of got to do it. But if I didn't have this that I felt like I needed to do, I would have totally gotten a mid-range whiskey and mixed it with. I think the problem is I don't have ginger ale. So I have Coke and I have Sprite. So I'm not sure which direction I could have gone there.
There's always ginger ale in the house for this specific reason. I don't drink ginger ale by itself. I don't think I ever have drank ginger ale by itself, but there's always some in there. It leads to an interesting question that I want to run by you is do you taste the difference in ginger ales either regularly or in a mixed drink? And if so, what's your preferred brand if you have one?
So I don't. There's 2 that I think are pretty consistently good. Canada Dry is obviously that's your heavy hitter. That's what they're kind of known for. And I don't think there's a big difference between them and Schweppes. That's like Coke, Pepsi. Outside of those 2 brands, I think that's when you start to notice they're a little bit more watery, I think.
Yeah.
Those 2 seem to have that, when you're looking for a good whiskey ginger, you want a little bit of that lime and then the sugar. And those 2 seem to have it naturally.
They also have that really heavy hitting carbonation flavor. I think that Canada Dry, I think of as kind of you go to the doctor because you got an upset stomach and they say go home and drink ginger ale. I feel like if they could prescribe it for you, they would prescribe Canada Dry because
it works. It absolutely works.
I've been hooked on lately. I used to be a Schweppes guy. I was pretty big on using Schweppes for it. I've been drinking Seagram's with my whiskey ginger ales. I think it adds a lot of the flavor I'm looking for. But I'm not a super big carbonation guy, where it hits me in the face. That's why I don't really like spiked seltzers or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the carbonation is too much. So I feel like with the Seagram's, I get a little bit of the carbonation, but a lot of the ginger ale flavor that I'm looking for.
Okay. I'm just jealous you're going to enjoy yours. But let's get this out of the way. I poured mine about 10 minutes ago, so this is only going to get worse.
Maybe it's going to be better than you think.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Nope.
What is the what's the note factor?
It's everything I hate about bourbon without any of the redeeming qualities.
Yeah, that would probably not be a great thing.
We've come around on a lot of bourbons to where it's okay, you know what? I really thought I was going to hate this, but it's kind of fine. I don't really mind it. And the biggest beef for me early on was I always thought of bourbon as a bad hot sauce, in that it's just burn. There's no notes, there's no redeeming quality, just burn. And we've had so many other ones that have been no, this is maybe a little bit more of a little bit of a spicier Irish whiskey, or it's got a little bit more of a smoky rather than a sweet flavor to it. I can appreciate it. This just hurts. It's just burn.
Well, I think for the price, it's probably in that wheelhouse of people just wanting to experience pain.
Yeah, this is the wife left and took the kids. That's what I'm drinking right now. I'm drinking a bitter divorce.
Yeah.
So
hey, I mean, it's got to exist out there in some capacity.
Yeah, it's I think you said it best. It's a whiskey if you're down on your luck.
It's highest ABV, lowest price.
Yeah, so it's 80 proof for $10. So, I mean, if you only have $10 to your name and you got to forget something, it does serve a purpose. But it is definitively not sipping whiskey.
I believe that. Well, in stark contrast, I apologize, but this is pretty darn tasty, if I do say so myself.
I'm glad one of us is having a good time.
I'm sure that I will be enjoying lots of those on our future trip together in the summertime.
That is a good
That'll
summer
be-
drink.
That'll be quite good.
Hang on. I'm going to see if I can order myself some Coke here. Because this
Make it a little bit more tolerable.
Something's got to cut this in some capacity.
Yeah.
This is
Put an
grotesque.
urgent DoorDash order in place. AKA,
Well, no, I have it in the house. I just need somebody to get it from the fridge.
That's funny. I would say what's interesting.
It could not have been that bad because he didn't make the face.
We're being chimed in by the producer saying that it couldn't have been that bad because you didn't make the face that you make when it's bad.
It was
So that's
that
a
bad.
very strong possibility.
That's what I've been
Look
Yes.
at
Thank
that.
you.
Amazing.
Hi.
Thank you. Ask and you shall receive.
That's the secret to hiding bad whiskey.
Hide it in something else. Now, this is probably just going to taste like really terrible Coke because I got sugar-free Coke, which is my own fault.
Oh my gosh. How did you manage that? Was this on purpose or a slip up?
No, I saw Coke was 2 for $3 for like it was the liter bottles were 2 for $3, and I was like, oh, sick! I'm gonna grab 2, and it was on Coke Zero Sugar.
I don't think I would have bought it.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Like
That's
they
fair.
don't
Does that
look
dress it up at all?
drastically different.
That's true. Yeah, but it is like the white writing versus the black writing, right? I think that's the main set off. But
That's how you
I think
can tell.
it's a fair mistake, honestly. What do you think? Is it making it any better?
Oh, immediately. But I
Immediately,
also don't have a
yeah.
device to stir it, so I know that I'm gonna get hit in the face with the Kentucky Gentleman at some point. I'm just playing roulette now.
I do the good old finger stir whenever I'm making a mixed drink at home. I mean, I wouldn't do that for company, obviously, but for
I would
myself,
appreciate
it's
that.
probably
Thanks.
pretty rare. I mean, you just might never know. Maybe that's just how Moe is stirring drinks.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm gonna.
Brandon's like, I don't know if I could be friends with you anymore. That sounds like a heinous crime.
I'm pouring my own drinks. That's for sure. I'm treating your house like a frat basement.
It's amazing. What would you do if you like went to somebody's house, right? You come to my house. This is a good example because for everybody listening, for my birthday, which was very recently last weekend, my amazing wife got me not 1 but 2 bottles of Eagle Rare, which Brandon and I have had on podcast and we really enjoyed, and it's really hard to get.
Yeah.
So what would you do, Brandon, knowing how much you like Eagle Rare and knowing how
if you
difficult
finger
it was,
swirled it.
if I poured some in there for you and I just kind of stirred it around to get the ice cubes chilling a little bit, I think that you'd probably have to drink it. It's either drink it and, get a little bit of Chris germs or miss out on Eagle Rare.
I'd probably drink it, but man, that's close.
It's
I'll tell
alcohol.
you.
It's an antiseptic, isn't it?
I'll tell you what I would do as soon as I got done sipping it. If you expand that store just a little bit further, it's so hard to find in New Jersey, and your wife found it through a distributor that has a friend in the industry who got that distributor some extra whiskey. I happen to be best friends with that very same distributor, so that supply chain can run dry in a hurry.
Oh no, I don't want to be. I don't want to be on the bad list there. So maybe I'll make sure to not put any finger stirs in your Eagle Rare.
Glad we
now on.
understand each other.
I
I'll put it in
brought what I
bargain
thought
on you.
was a surefire bargain on the table, and you countered.
Yes.
heavily.
Always got to
strong
know if you have
counter.
the leverage.
Absolutely. I mean, you've definitely proven your business knowledge in this deal here. So I sir salute you for that. But whiskeys being said and new whiskeys being said in general, we have the 2 bottles of Eagle Rare. We already reviewed Eagle Rare. I would certainly have it again just because it's amazing. But I also I finally got my hands on a bottle, or I should again say that for my birthday, I got a gift of Blanton's, which I've never had before. I know that we've talked about it in depth before, just saying that, it's a well-known whiskey. A lot of people put it on a very high pedestal. And I feel like for me personally, I haven't tasted it yet, but I always felt like that high pedestal was a little bit, is it really that good? Or is it just all about the face of it and everything else like that? So I'd be interested to try that one on podcast
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah,
And I'd love to hear from some people and see if they've had any experiences with it and their thoughts on, is it really as good as it is or as they say it is? I'd like to know about that prior to us going into it so we know what to expect. So I know we have a couple connoisseurs that follow us. It'd be great to hear from some of them.
Yeah, we'll have to put we'll put a poll out to see if it's accurately hyped or overhyped. I've only had it once, and it's probably been 3 years at this point, so I'm a little bit foggy on exactly what I remember from it, but I think that also kind of speaks volumes, because if it's the way it's talked about is that, you know, you'll always remember it, like it's that good, it like made an impression on you. And I can't say it made an impression on me because I'm 3 years removed from having it, and I don't really remember how much I liked it. I remember it was good. Like it was, I use it as a standard for good whiskeys, but it's not far and away. Oh my God, nothing will compare to Blanton's, which is kind of how it's talked about.
I feel like too, you know, like we've really, as you said in the beginning of the episode here, we've really expanded our taste for bourbon in general. Like I would say for myself now, like when we first started this whole venture a year, or however long ago, more than a year at this point, I would have never once thought that I wanted to drink bourbon. Like if we went out to a bar and I was like, yeah, let me get a glass of this specific bourbon or try a different bourbon, I would have always reached for like the Irish whiskey or maybe even a Scotch or whatever. Having done this podcast, the bourbon selection and my thoughts on bourbon have increased so much. I'm almost happy that I didn't try the Blantons early on in the process.
And that's
and
a good
I think
point.
that you're going to appreciate it differently by the time we have it together. So that may even be next podcast. I'm not sure what the deal is going to be. I know you had a bottle that you were interested in doing something.
Yeah, but it doesn't supersede Blanton's. So I mean, it's a middle of the road bottle. I think I spent $40 on it, so it's something we can do anytime. It doesn't. Blanton supersedes any of the other whiskeys that, you know, we pick up on a weekly basis. That's kind of like an event whiskey.
Yeah. The cool thing that I found out about it that I didn't really know, like I know people collect the tops, and I thought it was for some weird, like I didn't know what the reason was fully. I just knew that people collected the tops of them. I realized that each top has a letter on it, and if you collect multiple of the tops, they eventually spell Blanton's if you collect enough of them. So I think that's part of the reason why it gets kind of pricey, is because people are looking to collect specific ones. And they probably hunt like certain liquor stores for, you know, the B or the L or whatever. Like, so that was kind of cool to read into.
I'm looking at one. There's supposed to be letters. Oh, I see it now. Yeah, it's got to look in this.
It's really small.
Yeah, it's in the back left corner. Okay, I didn't
notice it originally. It was a really cool thing, and I like the way that it's presented, and I like the way that the bottles are when you get them. I mean, like mine came in. I'm sure most of them do, if not all of them, come in like a really nice decorative box. It was wrapped in like a velvet casing, and I think the cool part about it is, again, like Eagle Rare, it's one of those really harder whiskeys to get when you go to liquor stores. If you could even find it, they usually only let you buy one per person or whatever the situation may be. But I thought it was very well presented, like it was very well wrapped. So that's
cool too. The top is sick. Like the letters aside, like the little figurine on the top, which it looks like it's like a horse or a dog maybe, or a greyhound. It's tough to tell. That's a horse. Yeah, like it's a pretty sweet bottle. Did yours come with some of them? The only one I've ever seen that, you know, my buddy Joe, who's big into whiskeys, when I had it, did yours come with that like that netting or like that fence kind of looking thing around it?
So it didn't come with it came with like a velvety silk case, kind of. So like it came in a box, and then it had this cloth kind of surround with ribbon around like the actual neck of the bottle. It was very fancy. It was very nice. So I was pretty happy about like the presentation of it. So I mean, like I don't think I saved that. I probably should have, honestly, because I should have like brought it, you know, to your place to review it that way and taken it out of it. I think I just have the bottle at this point. But yeah, no, it was really, really neat. So I mean, we'll definitely have some good whiskeys, some high quality whiskeys to check out in the next couple episodes, and I feel like that's a good thing. Really, we were stepping up a little bit of our game here. I know we historically like the more reasonably priced whiskeys because we enjoy the fun in finding a good one, but I do think sometimes it's fun and enlightening to try the ones that are tried and true.
Yeah, so and I'm not great at remembering all the whiskeys we've done. I mean, it's got to be. We've been doing this podcast a year and a half with a couple double episodes, and we got to be getting up close to 40 plus whiskeys that we've done together now. But I'm trying to think of the ones that stand out as like the few times we've gotten our hands on like wow kind of whiskeys.
Yeah.
So I mean, Blanton's will be one of those. Eagle Rare for sure.
I think we stood by Writer's Tears for sure. It was a good one.
Writer's Tears stood the test of time. I would argue for what I paid for it, the Distillery Edition Jameson is in that same neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely. We're a little biased on that one, but yeah, I agree with you.
I'm even looking just as far as price point. I mean, that was $90 for the bottle. That's up there with the other couple. I'm trying to think if anybody else was in that neighborhood. I don't think so.
At price point wise, I don't think we bought too many that were of that higher price point. Most of them were like within the $30 to $45 price range, which was kind of our happy median.
Yeah, which it still kind of is. What was the Prohibition one? That wasn't expensive, was it? Bushmill Prohibition?
That was Bushmills. That wasn't too bad. I think that was like $30.
Okay.
Had a heck of a lot of flavor for $35.
Yeah, that was a good one. Basil Hayden was in that same area.
Basil Hayden was probably like $60, somewhere around there, $50-$60.
Yeah,
that was pushing kind of the middle of the road, and I really enjoyed Basil Hayden too. That was another one that stuck out for sure. I will say, I think still two of my favorite best bang for your buck ones that we've done happen to both be Irish whiskeys because we had the Prohibition era Bushmills.
Yeah,
and I don't remember. That one was really good. Did we review the Rowan? We did the Rowan Co.
Yeah, Rowan Co. was also really good.
That's also another one of my like top amazing, budget Irish whiskeys of all time. I have bottles of that sitting in the house just because it's like really good for either company or just every day, whatever. If you want to have a glass of whiskey, it's a good one to keep around.
I was just thinking back to the old whiskeys that we did, and we were just talking about how this podcast started off as like an Irish whiskey podcast and became a little bit more well-rounded with the bourbons and the scotches and all. The first ever whiskey that we did on this podcast was a bourbon.
It was, yeah.
Like the pilot episode was the bourbon from Pittsburgh.
It was Whistle Pig.
No, it was Wiggle.
Oh, Wiggle. You're right. Yep.
Yeah, Wiggle was the first ever, and then Whistle Pig.
And that was great.
Yeah, but it's just it is funny how that worked. Where we in our heads we grew into it, but that was also the first thing we ever did, and I actually quite enjoyed.
Somebody else for my birthday also got me another bottle. Got like quite a few bottles of whiskey for my birthday. Clearly, people know what I like.
Yeah.
But I got another bottle of Whistle Pig. It was their 6-year something or other, and it looked like a really good one. So that might be another thing that we could review going forward. I mean, I know we've done Whistle Pig in the past. We did their Traeger one.
Yeah,
I believe it was.
Whistle Pig does elevated whiskeys too. Like when I was buying this one today, there was a Whistle Pig 12-year for $96.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know they. I don't know. I didn't know they were up in that category.
You didn't think they were of the fine wine and dining
kind
of experience?
Not at all, really. That's not a knock on Whistle Pig. I loved it, but it's just there's names you associate with the top end of whiskey, and they're always kind of like these like regal sounding names, and Whistle Pig just wasn't one of them.
Hey, maybe it's more about the flavor than it is about the name at that point.
Would you like a Blanton's, a Glenlivet, or we have a Whistle Pig? Like, come on.
I'm going Whistle Pig every time.
One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah, but then like for the bourbon crowd, it kind of fits the theme of like, down south bourbon drinkers, I feel like.
Definitely.
It might appeal more to that audience than I see your point to like the regal environment, but I also feel like the Regal environment doesn't always necessarily support like drinking a bourbon neat or anything like that. In some circles it does, but I feel like down
No, you're
south
right.
there's a lot more.
When,
There's a lot
when
more
you
play there with that.
when you change the visual in your head and it goes from like the I'll have a Glenlivet to honey, you got that Whistle Pig? Like
Yeah, exactly.
that rolls off the tongue.
That narration, like that dynamic changes a lot when you bring that into it. It's all about
Yeah.
setting, right? Time and place.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Brittany's pregnant. Break out that Whistle Pig. Not for her.
or toasting to a fine business deal being closed at the Ritz-Carlton. Probably, maybe not. Whistle Pig
Yeah, that might not
is
be
not
Whistle
your
Pig
choice there.
territory.
Yeah,
No.
that might be more like a champagne or something
Ugh.
else.
Do you like champagne?
Yeah. I can't say that like I enjoy champagne as a drink. I
Mm.
like in the summertime on like a cruise or something, I enjoy a good spritzer, with
Okay.
like champagne and whatever the heck else they make with those. I don't even know like what they put in those most of the time. Or like a mimosa is good when you're like on a trip and you want to have like one of those morning cocktails. But as far as champagne on its own, I pretty much just down it every time there's a social cue for that. You're at a wedding or you're at a celebration, somebody breaks out champagne. I think everybody's kind of thinking the same thing. They think, well, I enjoy that this is a celebratory thing, but let's just get past this.
Yeah, I hate it. Hate it. Like I'm for somebody who claims to drink as much and as often as I do, like I put on a poor showing at bottomless mimosa functions. Like the taste is just orange juice shouldn't be bubbly for one, and the taste it's cheap champagne and it sucks. And then especially like you said with toasts, again super cheap champagne, and mentally for me, like if anything's like fizzy, the kind of like soda is, as soon as it's not ice cold, mentally I'm out.
Yeah, and you're not really getting ice cold champagne most of the time.
Never.
It's usually kind of like lukewarm. I did have our great producer did fill me in that the Whistle Pig that I was gifted was called the Whistle Pig 6-year piggyback, I think it was.
Okay.
So,
Let's see what
which
that
makes it
was.
even better for like the naming.
Yeah,
convention that we were
exactly.
just talking about.
Yeah,
But-
that's not something that closes like mergers.
Maybe
Yeah,
with a finger stir it could.
that's in an alternate universe. James Bond says fingered, not stirred.
I think we're on to something there. That's really
Well,
funny.
We'll have a spin-off edition. I'm excited.
Exactly.
I'm excited to give Blanton's another run. I wasn't overly hyped about it, but now that you mentioned how things have kind of changed with the bourbons, I'm ready to give it another chance. I'm ready to give love a shot.
Yeah, no. Maybe they should we should rebrand. We shouldn't say this on podcast because we could make a lot of money off this. But instead of like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or anything, it's gonna be like a whiskey show. And it'll be like some newbie in the whiskey industry, like some new guy that has no business in the whiskey industry. And he's going to go onto an island and there's just going to be a bunch of different bottles of like high class whiskey sitting there. And by the end of it, he has to choose like the best whiskey or something. And he has all these certain dinners that are paired fancily with different types of whiskeys, the merger whiskeys and then, the backyard's Kentucky bourbon whiskeys. And he has to determine if he wants to be taking home the Regal High Noon Blantons or the Kentucky bourbon.
Oh yeah, I mean, but that sounds like something I wouldn't want to produce. Like I would want to be the person in the show. That sounds awesome. Like what
That's
you're
fine.
telling
I'll
me
produce
is
it and you can be in it.
I get to go to a tropical island and take off work for a month and just be surrounded by fine whiskeys and good food, and that's the show.
Amazing. But we also the catch is that we put you on the island with no contact to the outside world at all, and you start losing.
Buddy, stop selling. You already sold me.
The whiskeys start to develop like personalities in your brain. So like you're thinking that Blanton's is looking kind of cute, or like they're a little angry at you one day. I think that's after a month of isolation.
Now you're just ripping off Castaway.
I didn't say there was any volleyballs involved.
Still, Blanton's going to be side-eyeing me the same way he talked to Wilson for months on end. It's the same show.
All of a sudden, Blanton's is sitting next to like Jameson one day, and it like causes some tension, and all of a sudden, one of them just winds up broken.
Of course, Jameson starts fighting somebody. Irish whiskey's fighting liquor.
I think we're on to something. I think that's totally appropriate.
I think you can make it like an animated short for sure. Like Toy Story, but with whiskeys.
Short. Keep out on a lookout on our YouTube.
It's
we'll
Whiskey Toy Story.
Of Brandon on an island talking to whiskeys.
I don't even know. I think you have to remove. You might even have to remove you and I. Like it might be. I'm saying Toy Stories because of the animation, but have you seen? Do you see the movie Sausage Party with when the grocery store comes alive?
Yeah.
The liquor store comes alive, and like
it's a spinoff.
Yeah, people are hurling like the Italians are organizing. The Irish whiskeys are all fighting with each other.
It's
got potential.
It's the 5 boroughs, but it's whiskey in a liquor store.
Somebody make that. So, find us in the DMs if you have animation skills. We'll cut you in on 20%, but somebody's got to make that movie.
It's $1 million idea.
It is, and you can have $200K coming your way if you have the right contacts. So, whoever made Toy Story, hit me up. Pixar, please.
I'm sure they'll be ringing us as soon as this podcast is over.
Yeah, we'll get taken to a black site because they're already working on it.
They're like, "How did you guys know about this?"
Yeah, we'll cut you in, but keep it down.
Yeah. All of our like few people that watch these on a day to day, they're really going to be they're calling up other companies to let them know our ideas.
I will say what's kind of fun, and we'll leave it after this because we're a little bit over a half hour mark. The last 3 episodes or so, like usually what we'll do is we'll record these episodes, we'll put them out, and then go to bed and just see who watched overnight. It has been kind of neat to be able to see. Like I think today we had 6 people or so watching at one time. Like it is kind of neat to see the live viewers who are like watching and doing it along with us. I think last week we had 27 live. I won't know this one until we get done, but there's something more fun about it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I put ourselves down all the time, and I think that's just because I set my expectations low, and then I'm like super pleased and super happy to see that the following that we've developed are people that actually want to like watch our content. Because I have to say, the people that do watch it pretty consistently. So, as a ending thing here, thank you all that actually do watch us and support us through this whole thing. You guys are the reasons why we keep doing this every 2 weeks and enjoying the heck out of it.
It is kind of bananas, like. The first few episodes we did, we were like, 5, 6, 8, maybe 10 people listened. And it's gotten to the point now where, like, we had an episode that did 20, and we kind of texted each other, like, all right, whatever we did that episode, we're not doing it again. Because, now we're looking at, 45. Like, last week we did 65. I think you and I have had a couple 70s. Like, it is kind of crazy how quickly that community's built for a podcast that only has 170 followers.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Seriously, thank you all that support us through this.
Yeah, I have no idea why you watch, but I appreciate you keep doing it. And we'll start bringing you more and more, exclusive whiskeys. If you want that, if we go too far one way and you go, hey, look, we watched because it was cheap, we'll go back that way too.
And if you guys have suggestions, let us know. We're more than happy to tweak things up a little bit or to bring any listener opinions into the mix. We'd love to hear from you guys. Yeah, it's driven by you guys. So until next pod, when we break out the fanciest whiskey we've had yet, I'm Brandon, that's Chris, and we're the Whiskey Gingers.